You guys are kind of in the bushes, but whatever. What's up, guys? Dave here, and I wanted to go over my 5 favorite belt knives for bushcraft. Let's not get too caught up into the weeds. It's starting to rain a bit. Let's just dig right in. And in the comments below, make sure to write down your favorite knives. Oh, when you think you want to come and film a video. I really wanted to film this one out on the log out there, but it just started to pour rain, and then it would stop pouring rain, and then I would try to go set up out there, and then it would pour rain again. And so I just decided to film it inside the old survival shelter. Number 1 is the Terava Jaakari Puukko. I really enjoy this knife. I really like the way that the handle is designed and how it's fully encased in this rubberized material. It gives a really nice feel, and it gives you traction on the knife even when it's wet. It's about 4 millimeters thick, but it's got a fairly high Scandi grind, and that makes the edge still have a good angle, so it can still feather stick and carve really well. As well as that, it's very durable because of the thickness, and it's got a good weight to the knife. You can definitely come back here, and I put like this pinky lanyard on the back so I can do some light chopping with it. It's very good at batoning, and it's just a good knife overall. Very solid, very strong. The steel is pretty good. Edge retention is pretty good. The 80 CRV2 is not bad steel at all. Blade length is about 4.5 inches. It's the perfect size for a bushcraft belt knife, and I really enjoy using it. The sheath is like okay. It works. I don't really like this extra little like snap on the end, but it does make it so it can't come out of the sheath at all when you do have that snap. Typically, I just leave the snap open so I can draw the knife fairly easily. The sheath is kind of like a simple leather wrapped around a hard plastic, and it's got the dangler option on the back. I do prefer danglers over just the standard belt loop most of the time. Number 2 is the Kellum Falcon. This is a really interesting and unique Puukko. It is more of a traditional knife, and it is just simple 12C27, I believe, and it's made by Kellum. I think the actual maker might be Atti. They also make some more traditional style knives. This was an anniversary gift, and it's got a really nice curly birch handle that's very wide, very comfortable, and I like the warm feeling of this knife. It's a really nice carving knife. It's not the most durable knife in the world. I did use this knife to build one of my super shelters back in the day. This was my main belt knife for that build, and it worked totally fine with the Haltefors Haltan hatchet doing the majority of the work. But it did loosen up on me just a touch, so I decided to take it apart, and I epoxied it all together, and now the knife doesn't move at all. It's super solid. This knife just adds something a little bit more unique to the belt knives that I do have. Often it ends up being more of like a backup knife nowadays than it does my main belt knife. In the end, it's kind of like a glorified Mora, to be honest. So whether or not any of you will pick this up is up to you, because you might have to pay 4 times the price instead of just picking up your standard Mora. The traditional sheath that it comes with is pretty dinky, but it does the job, and it makes for a traditional feel out there. This is a really good companion with an axe, and if you use your axe heavily for all of the harder tasks, you could easily get away with this being your main belt knife. Number 3 is Old Faithful. This is the Condor Bush Lore, the original with micarta handles. I have since modified the handle a little bit. I rounded out the bottom here, and I flattened out this area just a little bit, and I put a sharpening choil in it. I also rounded out the handle and made it to conform like perfectly into my hand. This is one of the best feeling knives that I have because I did customize it to exactly how I wanted it. It feels really nice to have more of a rounded handle at the back here instead of more of that beak style that it used to have. I really like the way that the micarta itself feels. I do recommend that if you do go for the Condor Bush Lore, the micarta version is a touch nicer, and it kind of like gets a patina over time. It darkens over time, which is pretty cool. A 3 mil thick knife, or like 1/8 of an inch. Blade length is about 4 1/4. And it was the like original knife that I brought out with me on one of my first survival videos that went viral. So it also has some memories attached to it as well. And it will always remain in one of my top 5 favorite knives. I still do have the original sheath for the Condor Bushler, but I can fit it into like the multiple different joker sheaths that I have. And because I do prefer a dangling option with a ferro rod, I typically just put it into one of the joker sheaths, and it makes it a really nice setup for the Condor Bushler. The design of the knife is just really functional, and with the little tweaks that I did make to the handle, just make it that extra bit special for me. Number 4 is the Tops Bob 154 cm version, the stainless steel version. I also have heavily modified this knife. I put a tech lock on the back of the sheath so I could horizontal carry this knife. I also ground down the back of the handle to get rid of that stupid thing that they had to strike the ferro rod that doesn't work. And I kind of took down this bit right here, right by the guard, so I could get my finger up closer to the blade. And then I also attacked the jimping a little bit. The reason why I really like the Tops Bob is because it really is the bomb-proof knife of my knives, it being 154 cm and having the hard plastic / Kydex sheath. This is like the all seasons knife that can go out with me when it's just absolutely pouring rain and I don't have to worry about the leather sheath or it being high carbon steel and worrying about rust. I also don't have to worry about breaking this knife. I've legitimately tried to break this knife and have failed. The only like flaw or downside to this knife is that it is pretty thick, it being 5 millimeters thick. And the grind is like more like an axe grind, I would say. Even though this knife is technically called the Fieldcraft, it's pretty bad at actually crafting things. What it excels at is just being a knife that you can really beat on and use as like, it's almost like a mini hatchet in some ways. I use it to chop. It's very good at like delimbing when you're building shelters and stuff. And the shelter that I'm hiding in right now, this knife was the main knife that I used to build the majority of it. I did not use an axe on this shelter build at all. So it just shows you what this thing is capable of. I like that it's a G10 handle as well because that makes it extra bomb proof. Lastly, has to be one of the jokers. So my favorite joker out of the bunch is the Joker Campero. I thought I should add a flat grind into this list, and this is my favorite flat grind that I do have on me. It is also a micarta handle that I particularly like a lot. It's a very well designed knife, and with the thickness being 4 mil thick and having that grind, it does really well with bushcraft as well. Some of the other jokers that are 4 mil thick with the Scandi grinds, they don't carve as well because it's a bit more steep, kind of like the Tops Bob. But the flat grind actually feather sticks really well, and it's just a really nice size of a knife. I like the sheath that goes with it, and the ferro rod matching ferro rod looks cool. When I go car camping with my family, this is the knife that I'll have on my belt because it's a really good prep knife as well. I can cut like cucumbers and carrots. The 14C28N makes it really good for the prep knife purposes, like I said. I just really like the Campero overall and the micarta handle that I got with it. It's really slick. It's a very cool knife, and I'm happy that I got it. So out of the 5 knives, there's 2 knives that I carry and particularly use the most. And the 2 that I end up using the most is definitely the Jaakari Puukko and the Tops Bob. Between these 2 knives, I don't really need any other knives because the Jaakari Puukko is just a great high carbon steel knife. And if I want to bring a high carbon steel knife, I will choose this one. And if it's really wet and horrible conditions, I will end up choosing the Tops Bob over the Jaakari Puukko so I don't have to deal with rust. I don't worry about these knives at all, and that also gives them an edge over the other ones. I hope this gives you a little bit of insight into my top 5 favorite bushcraft knives to bring out with me. Also, very recently, I created a free resource. It's just a PDF of a Bushcraft Kit Checklist for anyone to go and take a look at, and there's links for that in the description.